what is now what they call the Rust Belt, that could be revived to produce new sorts of green technologies. One of the things that this Congress has done was they, for the first time in 32 years, increased the miles per gallon standard for vehicles to 35 miles by 2020. Now, why that took 32 years, who knows? But that is the kind of thing that when you talk about government not taking action, it's a perfect example. It should have never, ever taken that long. And a lot of people, like Carol, wanted to see it higher. But she's a pragmatist, and so she did support that because she knew that it would make a huge difference, and indeed it will. When that's fully implemented, you can see up to 4 million barrels of oil a day reduced, $1,000 in savings for a family. So when you look at efficiency, efficiency is a double-edged sword. Not only can you cut greenhouse gas emissions, but you can cut costs. So the two go hand in hand, and it's a perfect way to not only help the economy, but to save the environment. They also implemented a Greening the Capitol initiative to make sure that the Capitol buildings are all carbon neutral, which is a huge change, and it's a great boon for the DC area. And I will admit I don't know everything. I thought that Germany was the leading producer, but that is the kind of thing that Germany a few years ago made a commitment to changing their economy and going towards a more renewable system and producing renewable energies, and it's been a great boon for them. So I don't have too much more to say other than that. Carol will continue to work to change the direction of the country. The one thing that she always says is that we can't go backwards. I think that after next Tuesday, there will be great change in this country, that we will finally grab on to this kind of locomotive that's running down the tracks here and leading us towards a new economy and a safe climate. So I, on behalf of her, ask for your vote next Tuesday, and I thank you all for attending.
Before I turn it over to some questions, we've run actually a bit longer than I thought we were going to, but I'm willing to stick around for a little while. And before we get to some Q&A, I want to point out that Carol Shea Porter's daughter, Kathleen, is here. Could you please stand and give a wave to everyone? I just recognize her. And for those of you who watched the first CD debates and the back and forth between these two campaigns and two candidates that are fighting very, very hard for votes, it is obvious that they can agree on many things because they're both wearing Argyle sweaters. So there is common ground in the first CD, and I'm happy to see that here tonight. And I also want to point out to you that I sprung on the first CD, folks, literally talking to Carol and talking to Jeb and Jeb's campaign manager, Deb Vanderbeek. Literally, I think it was 10 days ago or less that we sprung this on them because we had lost the forum for the Senate that I told you about. And they both immediately were sort of doing the flipping through the calendars, trying as hard as they could to get here tonight. And both of them, they literally just filled up the calendar and could not make it. But they were both very energized and interested in being here. So I thank both campaigns for being here tonight. And let's try to open things up for at least a few minutes for some questions. Does anyone have any questions tonight that they would like to ask of either the panel or the folks who are here? Like I said, we can collect emails. Any thoughts that you have about what you've heard tonight? Something that you agree with, something you disagree with? Yes, sir. Let me start with you back here. Fire away.
Okay. You want to hold it?
Yeah, I'll hold it for you.
Okay. I have one observation. I remember distinctly before 2000 hearing the current president talking about what we had to do about global warming, global greenhouse gases. So be a little bit leery about some of these things. But the question I have is, give it to Cameron, but all of you sort of touched on this. Cameron showed how much money we could save in 2020 or 25 if we start doing certain things to save energy and save greenhouse gases, suppress them. And what we need to do, of course, to do that, it takes investment right now. And where's that money going to go? One of the possibilities I see is we have a big program to go to Mars and go to the moon and then to Mars. Isn't it more important to keep this Earth stable first before we start going out to Mars?
What's your first name?
And I'm Phil. And I just wondered if you all would comment on where you might think we could get the money, because it's going to take a lot of money to do this kind of thing.
Cameron?
Yeah, I think if we can get $700 billion to bail out the banks, we can find $700 billion to solve this problem. Mars would be one area. I think there'd be many other areas we can do it. The one thing I say we could almost guarantee is that the payback on investing in energy efficiency would be more certain than what payback we may or may not get from the current bailout.
Stacy, from a policy perspective, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. It seems to me that there are a number of regulatory changes that incur sort of incremental costs now, but do pay themselves back actually pretty quickly. Like, for example, building codes changes. But one of the ones the presidential candidates differ on is that if you cap emissions and we have a cap and trade permit system, the Obama position and a number of other senators, a couple in both parties, view that as an opportunity to raise needed finances, because if you auction the permits, then you do raise the kind of money that can be invested in things like sort of longer term research, energy investment credits, energy household upgrade and household credits. Now that isn't to say that that's free money. I mean, I don't mean to suggest that that just materializes from nowhere, but it is a way to raise revenue internal to the climate sort of management system.
And I would just add that again, to think about the long-term risk is so much greater than the initial investment. But the problem is our leaders cannot go there. And I got to be honest with you, and I probably shouldn't even say this, especially with the film on there, but when you spoke about Jeb, I've known Jeb for 20 some odd years, way before he was even in the state legislature, and he has always been an environmental leader. I heard you read that, I thought, oh my God, Jeb is playing to the base to get elected again. I know we are forcing through this process of election to force people to not be leaders. And until that changes, I know Jeb is a much stronger environmentalist than that statement. And because the base of the Republican Party has not embraced this issue, he can't say it, and he can't act on it. He has to say we have to drill and this and that, and maybe he'll disagree with me and fine, I'll get the email. But the reality is we have a crisis of leadership. When you were speaking, actually, I was thinking about the only time in recent years I've seen the American public really shift in a major way on something was when President Bush came to the American people and said, we have evidence that, these weapons of mass destruction. And that night, I saw people, friends of mine, go, we really have to go to war. Of course, we found out it was all not true. This next president, whoever it is, has to get up in front of the American people and be a leader on this issue and say, this is an imperative, this is a moral, this is an economic imperative. And let's just hope whoever wins does.
Thank you. Does anybody else? You have a question, sir?
Yeah, I had a question, actually more of a remark about Ms. Finkelstein's assertion that we have to build a culture of abundance, and the spiritual tradition that I'm from agrees with that also. And the problem is that the capitalism as it is practiced right now tends to hide this abundance that Mother Earth provides us, and it tends to hide it by allowing the more powerful elite to hoard the multitude of resources. And to bring that to concrete examples, is I don't see where the state is going to allow the population to have health care both and have the funds to retrofit their houses. Not to speak of trying to get Haiti protected from tropical storms and whatnot. So I'm very much impressed with Oxfam and their take on this. And I think that if the government, whether it's Barack Obama, and I think he's better than the other one, if the government doesn't create a revolution, then we'll just need to get a revolution from the bottom up, and people just start taking the matters in their own hands and create the communities that are sustainable and humane. That's it.
And so, yeah, I'm glad you didn't ask me to answer the question about where the money was going to come from.